I thought I knew what jealousy looked like until I met Sophia. 8 months into dating Marcus, the sweetest guy I'd ever fallen for, I believed I was being paranoid about his female best friend. After all, they had been close for 6 years before I even existed in his world. But when she gave him that birthday gift with the engraving, everything changed. I realized my instincts were not wrong, and what happened next proved that sometimes the biggest threats come from those claiming to be just friends. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button if you have ever dealt with relationship drama involving a third party, and do not forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one. Trust me, you will want to hear how I handled what Sophia confessed to me next. Meeting Marcus felt like finding something I did not even know I was searching for. It was a rainy Tuesday morning at Corner Coffee downtown when our eyes met across the crowded shop. He was reading a paperback novel, completely absorbed, while I fumbled with my laptop trying to connect to the Wi-Fi. When he looked up and smiled, offering to help with the password, I felt that instant spark people always talk about, but I had never experienced. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours. Marcus worked as a software engineer but loved hiking, cooking, and had this infectious laugh that made everyone around him smile. He was thoughtful in ways that surprised me, remembering small details about things I mentioned and following up with genuine questions. Within weeks, we were inseparable. He would bring me coffee before work, leave little notes in my car, and had this amazing ability to make ordinary moments feel special. That is when I first heard about Sophia. Marcus mentioned her casually, the way you might reference a sibling or longtime family friend. They had met during their sophomore year at college and had maintained a close friendship ever since. She was a freelance graphic designer, incredibly talented according to Marcus, and someone he considered one of his most important people. I appreciated that he had meaningful friendships, especially ones that had lasted through different life phases. The first time I met Sophia was at Marcus's birthday party in March. She arrived fashionably late, wearing a flowing red dress that perfectly complemented her auburn hair and tall, confident frame. She had this magnetic presence that drew attention immediately. Sophia greeted me warmly, complimenting my earrings and asking about my work in marketing coordination. On the surface, she seemed lovely, but something felt slightly off about our interaction. Throughout the evening, I noticed how she and Marcus had these inside jokes that would make them both burst into laughter while the rest of us stood there confused. She would reference memories from college spring break trips and random adventures they had shared over the years. While I understood that long friendships naturally involved shared history, the way she delivered these stories felt almost like she was marking territory, reminding everyone present that she knew Marcus in ways others did not. What started as mild observation gradually became harder to ignore. Sophia had a habit of calling Marcus at 11 o'clock at night, claiming she needed urgent advice about work projects or personal drama. These conversations would last 45 minutes to an hour, with Marcus pacing around his apartment, while I sat on the couch feeling increasingly uncomfortable. When I gently mentioned that the timing seemed inconsistent with true emergencies, Marcus defended her, explaining that Sophia was dealing with difficult clients and really valued his perspective. During group outings, Sophia consistently positioned herself next to Marcus, whether we were at restaurants, movie theaters, or casual gatherings at friends' houses. She had this way of leaning into conversations, placing her hand on his arm when making points and maintaining eye contact that lasted just a beat longer than necessary. When I brought this up to Marcus, he brushed off my concerns, insisting that Sophia was naturally touchy with all her friends, and I was reading too much into normal behavior. The text messaging became another source of tension. Marcus's phone would buzz constantly with memes, work updates, and random thoughts from Sophia. He would chuckle and show me some of them, but I noticed he did not share all of her messages. Sometimes he would smile at his screen and then quickly put the phone away when he noticed me watching. When I asked about it, he would say, Sophia had sent something about work that would not interest me or reference people I did not know. Perhaps most frustrating were Sophia's suggestions for activities that sounded distinctly like date ideas. She would propose hiking trips to scenic locations, cooking classes for culinary adventures, or wine tastings at trendy new venues. Then, almost as an afterthought, she would mention that I should come along too. These invitations felt like she was planning romantic outings with Marcus and grudgingly including me to maintain appearances. The breaking point came with Marcus's birthday gift. We had all gathered at his favorite restaurant for dinner, and the gift exchange happened after dessert. I had given him a first edition of a book by his favorite author, something I had spent weeks tracking down, because he had mentioned wanting to read it during one of our early conversations. Marcus loved it, kissing me and saying it was incredibly thoughtful. Then Sophia presented her gift. It was a beautiful silver watch, clearly expensive, with an engraving on the back that read, "To my forever adventure buddy, S." The table went quiet for a moment as Marcus opened the box and read the inscription aloud. He seemed genuinely moved, hugging Sophia tightly and thanking her for such a meaningful present. I sat there trying to process what I had just witnessed, feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. The word forever echoed in my mind as we walked to the car later. When I carefully brought up the gift with Marcus, asking if he thought the engraving was perhaps more intimate than typical friendship gifts, he became defensive immediately. He explained that Sophia had always been generous and thoughtful, and that this was just her way of showing appreciation for their long friendship. He asked why I was determined to find problems where none existed and suggested that maybe I needed to work on my own insecurities instead of projecting them onto his relationships. Marcus's reaction to my concerns about the watch made me feel like I was losing my mind. Here I was pointing out what seemed like obvious romantic undertones, and he was making me feel paranoid and unreasonable. I started questioning my own judgment, wondering if 8 months of dating really gave me any right to comment on a 6-year friendship. Maybe I was being the overly jealous girlfriend that everyone warns about. But then I started paying closer attention, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. Sophia began posting Instagram stories that featured her activities with Marcus, but with a strange twist. She would share photos from our group outings at farmers markets or weekend brunches, but somehow I would be cropped out, or she would post them in a way that made it appear she and Marcus were there alone. When mutual friends saw these posts, they would sometimes ask me privately if Marcus and Sophia were dating, having no idea that I had been present for these supposedly romantic moments. During dinner parties with our friend group, Sophia developed a habit of steering conversations toward college memories she shared with Marcus. She would bring up spring break trips, late-night study sessions, parties where they had taken care of each other, and random adventures from their early 20s. While reminiscing about shared experiences is normal among old friends, Sophia seemed to weaponize these stories, using them to demonstrate the depth and intimacy of her connection with Marcus in front of everyone else. I also noticed changes in how Sophia dressed when she knew Marcus would be around. For casual group hangouts, she would show up in outfits that were significantly more revealing than what she wore to other social events. Low-cut tops, short skirts, and clothing that required frequent adjusting became her standard uniform for Marcus-adjacent activities. She would make comments about being warm and remove sweaters to reveal tank tops, or mention that she had come straight from yoga class as an excuse for wearing athletic wear that left little to the imagination. The phone calls between Marcus and Sophia were getting longer and more frequent. What started as occasional evening check-ins evolved into daily conversations that would stretch for over an hour. Marcus began stepping outside or going into another room for privacy during these calls. When I asked about the secrecy, he explained that Sophia was going through personal issues and needed someone to listen. He made me feel selfish for wanting his attention during what he described as his friend's time of need. Feeling increasingly isolated and confused, I decided to talk to my older sister, Sarah, who had always been my voice of reason during relationship challenges. After listening to everything I had observed over several months, Sarah looked at me with complete seriousness and said I was not imagining things. She pointed out that healthy friendships have natural boundaries that respect romantic relationships, and that what I was describing sounded like someone who was actively competing for Marcus's attention and affection. Sarah encouraged me to have a direct, honest conversation with Marcus about establishing clear boundaries with Sophia. She suggested I approach it from the perspective of what I needed to feel secure in our relationship, rather than attacking Sophia's character or motivations. This seemed like reasonable advice, so I planned out what I wanted to say and asked Marcus if we could have a serious conversation about our relationship. The conversation went worse than I had feared. When I explained that I needed him to set some boundaries with Sophia regarding late-night phone calls, overly intimate gifts, and physical affection, Marcus became immediately defensive and angry. He accused me of being jealous, insecure, and controlling. He said that Sophia had been part of his life long before I arrived and would continue to be important to him long after our relationship ended, which felt like a threat disguised as a statement of fact. Marcus told me that my inability to handle his friendship with Sophia revealed character flaws that concerned him about our long-term compatibility. He suggested that instead of asking him to change a meaningful relationship, I should work on my own issues with trust and self-confidence. The conversation ended with him saying he needed space to think about whether our relationship was worth continuing if it meant constantly defending his friendships to someone who clearly did not understand or respect them. I left his apartment that night feeling completely dismissed and questioning everything about our relationship. Had I been unreasonable? Was I really just an insecure person who could not handle her boyfriend having female friends? Or was I right to trust my instincts about what I had been observing? The gaslighting had been so effective that I genuinely did not know what to believe about my own perceptions anymore. 3 days after our disastrous conversation, Marcus invited me to a game night at his apartment, which felt like his way of extending an olive branch without actually apologizing or addressing my concerns. I agreed to come, hoping that maybe some normalcy would help us move past the tension. I had no idea I was walking into a situation that would finally reveal the truth about Sophia's intentions. Sophia arrived 30 minutes after everyone else, carrying a homemade peach cobbler that happened to be Marcus's favorite dessert. She mentioned casually that she had spent the afternoon baking because she remembered him saying how much he missed his grandmother's recipe. But what really caught my attention was what she was wearing, an oversized college hoodie that I immediately recognized as belonging to Marcus. When someone complimented it, she explained with a laugh that Marcus had let her borrow it weeks ago, and she had forgotten to return it because it was so comfortable. As we set up for board games, Sophia made herself comfortable on the floor next to Marcus, sitting close enough that their knees touched throughout the evening. She had brought a bottle of wine to share and kept refilling Marcus's glass while making inside jokes about their college drinking adventures. Every story she told seemed designed to highlight some intimate moment or shared experience that excluded everyone else in the room. During the games themselves, Sophia became increasingly touchy with Marcus. She would grab his arm when she disagreed with his moves, playfully punch his shoulder when he made jokes, and lean across him to reach for game pieces when there were easier ways to access them. At one point, she repositioned herself so that she was practically sitting in his lap while looking at his cards, claiming she was trying to help him strategize. The breaking point came when Marcus went to the kitchen to get more snacks. Sophia immediately moved to sit closer to me, and I thought she was finally going to make an effort at genuine conversation. Instead, she looked me directly in the eyes with a smile that did not reach her face and said something that made my blood run cold. "You know, Marcus and I have a connection that runs really deep." She began, her voice sweet, but her words calculated. 6 years of friendship build something special between two people. We understand each other in ways that others simply cannot comprehend. There are layers to our relationship that most people would never be able to reach, no matter how hard they tried or how long they stayed around. I stared at her, finally understanding that this was not casual conversation, but a deliberate declaration of war. She was telling me as clearly as she could, without explicitly stating it, that she considered herself Marcus's primary emotional partner and viewed me as a temporary distraction. The fake sweetness in her voice made it even more chilling because I realized she had been planning this moment, waiting for the right opportunity to let me know exactly where I stood in her mind. The next day, I decided I needed to confront Sophia directly rather than continuing to navigate this through Marcus, who clearly was not seeing the situation clearly. I sent her a text asking if she wanted to meet for coffee to clear the air about any tension between us. She agreed immediately, which should have been my first warning that she was prepared for this conversation. We met at a neutral cafe across town, and Sophia arrived looking confident and composed. I had planned to approach this diplomatically, but something about her demeanor told me that subtlety would be wasted. So I decided to be direct and asked her point blank about her intentions regarding Marcus and whether she had feelings for him that went beyond friendship. For a moment, Sophia just looked at me with what seemed like surprise, and then her entire facade dropped. The pretense of friendly concern disappeared, and I saw the real person underneath for the first time. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and began speaking in a voice that was completely different from the sweet, considerate tone she used around Marcus and our mutual friends. "You want honesty," she said with a cold smile. "Fine. I have been in love with Marcus for 6 years. 6 years of being there through everything, supporting him through breakups, celebrating his successes, understanding him better than anyone else ever could. The timing was never right before, but that does not mean I gave up or stopped caring." She continued, her voice getting stronger and more confident. "You have been dating him for 8 months. 8 months of whatever this is you think you have with him. But I was here first, I know him better, and I will be here long after you are gone. Marcus is just experimenting right now, trying to figure out what he really wants. But eventually he will realize that what we have is real and lasting, not some temporary romance based on physical attraction and surface-level compatibility." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes never leaving mine. 6 years of deep friendship and genuine understanding beats 8 months of whatever you want to call this relationship. I have been patient and I have been supportive of his choices, but do not mistake that for acceptance. Marcus belongs with someone who truly knows him, someone who has proven their commitment over years, not months, and that someone is me. Hearing Sophia's confession was simultaneously validating and terrifying. On one hand, I finally had confirmation that I had not been paranoid or insecure. My instincts had been absolutely correct about her intentions and the threat she posed to my relationship. On the other hand, I now understood that I was dealing with someone who had been strategically working to undermine my relationship with Marcus for months, and who felt completely entitled to do so based on her longer history with him. Instead of reacting emotionally the way Sophia probably expected, I decided to take a step back and approach this situation strategically. I spent the next week doing some careful research about Marcus and Sophia's friendship, reaching out to mutual friends who had known them longer than I had. What I discovered was incredibly illuminating and gave me exactly the ammunition I needed to fight back effectively. Through conversations with Jessica, a college friend who had stayed in touch with both Marcus and Sophia, I learned that this was not the first time Sophia had inserted herself into Marcus's romantic relationships. She had a documented history of sabotaging his connections with other women through subtle manipulation, inappropriate behavior, and manufactured crises that required his immediate attention and support. Jessica told me about Marcus's previous girlfriend, Amanda, who had dated him for over a year, before finally ending things because she could not handle Sophia's constant interference. Apparently, Sophia had used similar tactics: excessive texting, emergency phone calls, overly intimate gifts, and physical affection that pushed boundaries. When Amanda had tried to address these issues with Marcus, Sophia had played the victim, claiming that Amanda was trying to isolate Marcus from his friends and make him choose between his girlfriend and his support system. I also discovered that other people in their social circle had noticed Sophia's behavior over the years, but had not felt comfortable saying anything to Marcus directly. Several friends admitted they had always suspected Sophia had romantic feelings for Marcus, but they had hoped she would eventually move on and find someone else. Instead, she had become increasingly possessive and manipulative as Marcus entered more serious relationships. Armed with this information and screenshots of some particularly excessive text exchanges between Marcus and Sophia that friends had witnessed, I decided it was time to present Marcus with evidence rather than emotional appeals. I invited him over for what I described as an important conversation about our future, and I had everything organized and ready to present clearly and calmly. When Marcus arrived, I could tell he was expecting another emotional confrontation about Sophia, but instead I had prepared a rational presentation of facts. I showed him the pattern of Sophia's behavior across his previous relationships, the testimonies from mutual friends who had witnessed her manipulation tactics, and examples of how her actions consistently crossed normal friendship boundaries. Marcus initially tried to defend Sophia and dismiss the evidence as coincidental or misinterpreted, but as I continued presenting information, I could see him starting to process what I was showing him. The look on his face changed from defensive to confused to concerned as he began recognizing patterns he had not seen clearly before. I then told him about my coffee meeting with Sophia and her explicit confession of romantic feelings and her stated intention to outlast our relationship. I explained that she had admitted to strategically positioning herself as his primary emotional support while undermining his romantic relationships, because she believed she had a greater claim to his affection based on the length of their friendship. The final piece of evidence was the most damaging to Sophia's case. I had asked Jessica to be present via video call to confirm the information she had shared about Sophia's history of interference. Jessica reluctantly agreed to speak directly to Marcus about what she had witnessed over the years, including specific incidents where Sophia had deliberately created drama to redirect Marcus's attention away from girlfriends. After hearing everything, Marcus sat quietly for a long time, clearly processing years of interactions through this new lens. Finally, he looked at me and said he owed me a massive apology for dismissing my concerns and making me feel like I was imagining problems that were actually real. He admitted that Sophia's behavior had cost him relationships before, but he had always believed her explanations that his girlfriends were simply jealous or insecure. I told Marcus that I needed him to make a clear choice about our relationship and establish firm boundaries with Sophia if he wanted us to continue. I was not asking him to end their friendship entirely, but I needed him to address her inappropriate behavior directly and make it clear that our relationship was his priority. I also made it clear that if he was not willing to do this, I would be ending our relationship immediately because I refused to continue competing with someone who was actively working to destroy what we had built together. Marcus chose to fight for our relationship. The next day, he arranged to meet with Sophia and confront her about everything I had shared with him. He told her directly about her confession to me and made it clear that her behavior had been inappropriate and damaging to his relationships. He established specific boundaries: no more late-night phone calls unless there were genuine emergencies, no more overly intimate gifts, no more physical affection that crossed friendship lines, and most importantly, she needed to respect his romantic relationships instead of working to undermine them. Sophia's reaction was explosive and revealed her true character in ways that shocked even me. Instead of apologizing or showing any remorse for her behavior, she became furious that her strategy had been exposed. She accused Marcus of throwing away 6 years of friendship for someone he had only known for 8 months. She claimed I was manipulative and controlling, trying to isolate him from people who really cared about him. But the most revealing part of her reaction was when she demanded that Marcus choose between our relationship and their friendship, insisting that he could not have both, because I would never stop trying to eliminate her from his life. This ultimatum backfired completely because it proved everything I'd been saying about her intentions and her inability to respect appropriate boundaries. Marcus finally saw Sophia clearly for the first time, realizing that she had never actually respected him as a friend or supported his happiness in relationships. Instead, she had been strategically positioning herself as his primary emotional partner while waiting for the right moment to make her move romantically. Her explosion when confronted revealed that their friendship had been built on false pretenses and manipulation rather than genuine care for his well-being. The immediate aftermath was painful for both Marcus and me. He felt betrayed and confused about years of friendship that he now understood had been based on deception. I needed time to rebuild trust and confidence in our relationship after months of being made to feel paranoid and insecure. We decided to try couples counseling to work through the damage that had been done and establish better communication patterns for the future. The counseling sessions were incredibly helpful in processing what had happened and creating a stronger foundation for our relationship. Marcus learned to recognize manipulation tactics and understand how his desire to be supportive had been exploited by someone with ulterior motives. I learned to trust my instincts while also communicating concerns more effectively rather than letting resentment build over time. Gradually, our relationship began to heal and grow stronger than it had been before. Marcus proved his commitment through consistent actions rather than just words, showing me that I was his priority in ways both small and significant. I started connecting with new friends, including Jessica from work, who became a genuine friend without any hidden agendas or complicated dynamics. Most importantly, I learned to love and value myself enough to set clear boundaries without feeling guilty about protecting what mattered to me. I realized that trusting my instincts was not the same as being paranoid, and that asking for respect in a relationship was not the same as being controlling. Real love supports your happiness and security rather than making you question your own perceptions and worth. 6 months later, Marcus and I are stronger than ever, building a relationship based on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine partnership. We have learned that true friendship supports your happiness rather than competing with it, and that the biggest threats to relationships often come from people who claim to care while slowly poisoning what you have built together. I learned that love without boundaries is not love at all, and that sometimes protecting what matters to you requires difficult conversations and hard choices. But most importantly, I learned that the right person will choose to fight for your relationship rather than asking you to accept disrespect in the name of maintaining peace. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever dealt with someone who claimed to be a friend while actively working against your relationship? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe for more real stories about navigating relationships and trusting your instincts. Thank you for listening, and remember that you deserve relationships that make you feel secure, respected, and truly valued. Sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones we need to watch most carefully.